Well, good evening. Here we are again. Got a great guest tonight. Really interesting guy. Um, I met him at Flux in the summer. Love his work. Had a big chat with him. Also, we did meet at a previous Flux. Had a chat there, but he had some different stuff at the latest Flux, and really interesting. And you'll find as well this now interesting for me is that there's a bit of purple in the colours that Paul will bring up. And I've been told that I've got a purple aura. God knows what that means, but apparently I've got a purple aura that's looking after me. And very strangely, um, everything that's ever happened in my life that's been good, purple's been involved somewhere. So it's quite a weird one, if you believe in any of that. But before we get to Paul, next week's artist. Firstly, it's going to be on Wednesday night, not Thursday, because it's Halloween. I don't want my doorbell ringing all the way through, all the way through this. Won't be good. But also, I'm at a big award event at the O2 on that Thursday night. But so next week's artist is actually Sarah Levin, and again another Flux artist. Met Sarah quite a few times. She's best way of putting it, petrified. It's the best way of putting it about coming on. But I've managed to coax her and got some fantastic work for her. And I'll give you a little bit of an insight. This is what her work looks like. But she's got a really fascinating way of creating her art. So next week, 7 o'clock on Wednesday will be Sarah. So that's as I said, that was coming up next week. So tonight's artist is going to be as I said, quite an interesting chat. I've put together my usual video, and I'm going to start with that before we bring Paul in. So there you go. Told you it was good. So let's bring Paul in. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Good to see you. Everything's working fine. We're all happy. All the sound's good. The video's good. It's great. Got some of your work. Let's just open that up a bit too. Got some of your work on the walls behind you. I take it this is your studio, is it?
This is the studio. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks good too. Yeah. Which leads me to a very my first question, if you like, really, before we get into how you got into all this. Do you have more than one painting on the go at any one time?
Sometimes. Yeah, it depends what I'm working on. There's different series, and sometimes they take layers, so you do have to wait for backgrounds to dry, layers to dry. But I do tend to, I kind of start one and it's a bit of an obsession to kind of get to the end of it, but then then I might kind of come back to one. Good thing about oils is that you can work back into something quite easily.
Right. Okay. And is it oils mostly, or do you do acrylics as well? Or?
All the paintings are oils. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. crikey, when I was still at school, I was going to art college, and started with oils, and that's, I understand completely what you're saying about, you know, how you can rework them, and also you got to wait for it to dry, etc. So it's really yeah, great, well done.
Yeah, and there's an addiction to oil paint. I know.
Well, and that's not just the smell.
It's not just the smell. It's there's something about the substance of it and the kind of what you can, the effects you can create and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. So
yeah, which I guess you can't do with acrylic or anything like that, as
you
in the
probably
same way.
listen, you probably can, but
Yeah,
I
it's not
just
something you
it's
choose to
just a
do.
process that just the processes that you evolve over time.
Mm,
You kind of
mm,
get used to something.
mm.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's go back in time. Let's find out how you actually got to the point you're at now. What was your, where did you start in life? What was your point? How'd you get to,
I was
how'd you get
born
oh, ball what, with the paintbrush in
Wednesday.
your hand?
I was born on Wednesday, full of woe, apparently, which has been true. Um, yeah, I was born, and I was born in the West Midlands, and then I moved to. I know you're in Hertfordshire, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
so yeah, I moved to St Albans when I was about
Oh, okay. Hmm.
11,
Hmm.
or Snowbans as it's known locally, and so yeah, I was, and at school I was, loved doing art. I love doing music too, and I
Mm,
really got into music when I was in my teenage years, and that kind of became my thing, I suppose, up until, well, my mid-20s, I suppose. But in between that, I mean, there was a period where I nearly went to art school, but instead I moved to London and into a shared house with a band that I was in with at the time, and
mm,
so I went off down a bit of a different path, and a checkered path, I would say. In my early 20s, it was quite kind of hedonistic and of the time, of what, everything that was going on back then. Um, but yeah, I got, so I kind of didn't do any art until I really got into my early 30s again. And then it was all kind of digital art and graphics. And,
mm,
you know, um, I always had an interest, and I had a real interest in drawing. So it's still drawing, but the painting came later, which I kind of, you know, don't know, when you're self-taught, you always have this thing about not going to art school, not having a degree, and not being able to kind of, talk about it in the right terms or the right, framework, or not having the right connections, even, things that art schools give you. So I feel like I'm always kind of catching up a bit, you know.
doesn't make you a bad artist, though. It doesn't make you,
Not at
the
all,
fact
yeah.
we all, I mean, I get people saying to me, oh, have you got an MA? No, I haven't. But does that mean my work would be any different? No, I don't. I don't believe it is. It's
I
because
think,
it
yeah,
comes
I think going to art schools, I would recommend that people go to an art school,
mm,
because I think you do get a framework and you get a kind of reflection on what
mm,
you're doing. And I think I mean, I started painting maybe in the mid 2000s, and that was almost as a reaction from working on screens all the time, and I wanted to do something physical, you know, and um, yeah, and I just started painting and thought, oh, this is good, I want to do this now. But it takes a long time. You get that initial buzz of doing it, and then the more you get into it, the more you realize that you've got a whole period where you've just literally got to develop what you're doing and learn some techniques and processes. And
mm.
yeah, but that
And
was,
it's, I mean, it's something that strikes me, especially with the, like the painting that you got behind you, for instance. It strikes me that there is, sorry, the female form behind you, yeah.
yeah,
It strikes me that there's a definite drawing element to that, whether you draw with a paintbrush or whether you genuinely draw it out first or whatever. But there's a definite drawing element to your work, whereas the well, look, this one, for example, you can see that there's not, and that I can see what you've created here. And this is where in my introduction, I'm talking about purples. We'll see there's quite a lot of that in your work. But and I put this one particularly on an easel because I wanted to get people to sort of grasp the size of your work. And we will talk about size in a bit, but that's why and also wanted people to realize it's a genuine painting, as opposed to a print or anything else on there. But so that, I can see that again. Look, there's another one here too. So when you're doing something like this, it's interesting. If I was going to photograph that scene, then you never put the horizon in the middle. You never do that. That's a no-no, big time. You're creating this. You're creating this one and this one, and you've done exactly that. You haven't put the horizon in the middle. You've got that in a perfect position. Now, that might not be planned. That might be that you just naturally know that's where it's going to go. And I find that quite fascinating, actually. And in this particular picture that you've got up now, or I've put up now, in particular, that comes across. What's the title of this image?
That one's called The Flames of Eternity.
So this comes to I always say that the title is part of the work. So, and the minute you say the title, as you have just done, the flames jump off the screen. They're there for everybody to see. Just make that a bit bigger so it's clear. The flames are there to see. Now, the flames of eternity, as we haven't touched on this, but you've got quite an element of fantasy in a lot of the work you do, haven't you? You got and you're touching on. There's a couple of things that really the sort of ethereal nature of your work. That's what drew me to it at Flux. Love that element of it, and as you know from the work that I do, there's an awful lot of fantasy sitting in that. But this. This is a very striking piece, as is the previous one. So let's bring us back to this point. How do you choose your color palette for a particular picture?
Well, I've kind of worked out a few. If you look at this series, which is called The World Beyond, you'll see that there's a few paintings that kind of repeat certain color schemes. And what you want to do is, what I do is generally limit it to maybe 5 colors.
Right.
And in fact, that purple one, which is actually magenta.
Listen, it's purple to me.
That one's actually probably got about 4 colors. And when I was first doing them, it was tempting to put every color on the palette in there, kind of thing, because you're trying to work out what works well together and none of them are completely naturalistic. I wouldn't say that, but they have to work as a kind of almost, a landscape that could exist, put it that way, even if it's a kind of unworldly or otherworldly kind of end result. There's got to be a harmony to those colors. So the color schemes themselves usually go from there's a few magenta ones that I've done. In fact, I've been through a purple period with another series as well. So I have used that kind of color scheme. It just works, I know kind of which colors are mixing well together. Some of the other ones, there's a kind of green blue mix that works really well together. And then there's the other image that you had up, the Flames of Eternity. That's got a few more colors in, but they're actually so you've got blue, greens, and oranges and gold, and the blue of the sky, which is a bit more blue, to make it more of a I suppose naturalistic landscape, even though it's completely not naturalistic whatsoever. So yeah, the colors kind of evolve as the painting's evolving, and sometimes they just go too far. You can completely easily overwork something, and you can easily add in too much, and 3 days ago it kind of looked much better than where you're at.
Well, yeah, and I think that's probably true of most artists.
Yeah.
The gift is knowing when to stop, and not keep fiddling, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting. So for people that don't know, because I didn't bring all that into the introduction, but of course Lisa Gray is the fabulous lady who runs Flux. She's watching, and she's dropped a little comment in there to say stunning work. So clearly got a fan there for sure. Well, you got two at least, because that's me and Lisa. So yeah, fantastic. We have people can put comments in the chat. I do bring out on the screen, so please feel free to do that. It's funny, Purple, for me. It's now become, because I was told, yeah, you got an aura and blah blah blah, and you got this whatever looking after you, purple, etc. And then I look back at all the things that had happened to me, but so much so now that if I want something to really go well, I will, somewhere on me, I will wear something purple, and it becomes I don't know, it suddenly gives you a little bit more confidence, even though it's probably a complete load of old nonsense. But it goes back to when I was 17 doing my driving test. Every single person that had this one particular woman as their test examiner had failed at my school, and they went, if you get this woman, you've had it. I was wearing a purple jumper. I passed. And I was like, suddenly I thought, and when I look back at all these little things all the way through my life, thinking, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And there we are, the first picture that comes through from you that I look at. Yep, there's the magenta or purple, whatever you like to call it, sitting there. And so, yeah, it's quite very interesting. But it is, I'm fascinated. I ask it every time. I'm fascinated how people choose their color palette. And also, so your process then is this, do you think right from day one, this is what I want to create? Or do you start putting something together and it evolves?
The landscapes evolve. They are
right.
I usually start with a kind of light point that's going to be the kind of which the rest of it will. There's in all the landscapes. There's a point of light that you want what I want to travel towards. So everything's kind of traveling towards this point of light, which draws in, the view of the piece. And the technical reason why I start with the lightest is because actually, if you're trying to put light on something that's paint already down, it's never going to have that absolute pristine, white, bright point of light. So yeah, and then things evolve around that, and it's not straightforward process. It's kind of it can be, even though they're abstract, they still have to kind of sit right.
Absolutely.
Which is a weird thing which only you know as you're developing it.
Yeah.
what sits
I
right.
mean, they are abstract, but they're also not, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, if you go back to this one, for instance, that could easily be a photograph of a landscape. And what I mean by that is, when I say easily, what I mean by that is it is possible, with certainly with filters and what have you, to create a similar looking,
yeah,
if the sky happened to be like that one night. But which is where it comes into you saying they are abstract, but they have to look and sit right. And I can understand that, especially when you look at this one with your light patch here, which brings me to another question, which is, do you prepare your canvas first? Are you painting straight on canvas, or are you, you putting a white background on it? What's your starting point?
I do. I mean, the canvases that I use are primed already. So,
Okay. Yeah.
but I don't work from a color background. No, I just go
Right.
straight on white.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know, maybe it's something that I'll experiment with later on. I don't know. Maybe a different kind of series would suit that.
Yeah. So
But
it's interesting. I mean, Michelle Watson, same as I do. We
yeah,
were at
yeah.
Flux together, and when I interviewed her, she does paint straight on an unprimed canvas, because she likes the effect that gives. So yeah, I find it quite interesting, the different techniques that people use to create their work. So all right, we've touched on the landscapes, but let's now touch on something different. To the landscapes, and you've got this sort of metamorphosis transformation thing, about an ethereal thing, all about your work. So let's have a look at this one. See, these are the ones. This is the type of thing that I saw at the latest Flux with you. I was totally fascinated. How what's your process in creating something like this?
Well, that one, yeah, that is a different process, and that's what
Yeah, that's
so basically, with to create this one, or this series of pieces, I had to work out, because I did a series of drawings, which I think you
we'll come
can
to, yeah.
come to, and I was thinking, well, I want to create some paintings around the same theme, and it's called natura formis, and nature forms. So it's forms growing out of a kind of landscape of trees. Some people see veins, but they're
Oh
intended.
no, I see trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I had to work out, like, how am I going to do these as paintings? Because if I do the trees and then try and paint round them to add the background, that's going to look really naff, So I worked out this process of doing a gradient background, or the background is done first,
Yeah.
and then I evolve the form in layers over the top of that. So they pretty much always start off as white, in white paint, and then I'll add the gradient as another layer to those individual branches of the trees. Some will be left as just the white, and because the background's always dark, it almost gives it a kind of negative
Yeah. Yeah.
negative effect, which I like. It's I
Yeah,
think,
I do. I like it. Yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah, there's some animals in this series, but there's a lot of female forms, which is just, there's, for instance, eagle again, using I had a big tube of magenta, obviously. But yeah, again, this is an eagle, and I like the symbolism of that, because it's an apex predator that is also in danger in today's world. There's a danger that these magnificent creatures could go extinct, so I'm trying to bring awareness around that. and the everything. I suppose the message of these paintings is that everything is part of nature. You know, we're part of nature. Animals are.
Hmm.
You know, human beings are. And weirdly, which is something I touch on another series, is weirdly we're kind of. I mean, we've always fought against nature. I suppose that's been our big enemy as a human race. Oh my God, we've got to find food, we've got to find shelter, we've got to nature can be actually quite cruel to all living beings and humans especially.
Yeah.
But we've kind of almost lost that whole thing about being in harmony, if you like, with nature, um, and especially now with AI, we're going into another phase, which is taking us away from even the human capacity to naturally form communities and groups. It's I think it's very odd what's going on, and we've never we haven't done it before.
And I'm not. I'm not a fan at all. I think you just because you can type a few words in and create a picture doesn't make you an artist. I think
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
it's an that's a whole massive discussion. Every time I do some of my talks, it comes up, and proof of the point that actually the winner of last year's Sony Photographic Awards, World Sony Photographic Awards, it was an AI picture, and the guy said, "I'm not taking the prize. I just wanted to prove you won't be able to tell the difference." And it's true.
yeah,
It's true. No, they couldn't. So
yeah.
it's the creative side of it. What I want to do now, just before we carry on with other pictures, is would you mind just standing up, moving back, standing behind
Can do.
beside the picture you've got at the
Yeah,
back?
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to I want people to realise just how big that picture is. There you go. It's you can't tell, you cannot tell at all from when you're sitting close to me just how big that is. So that kind of leads on to the next question about that is, um, you obviously love working on big pictures, and is there a reason really behind that? Is it
Um,
you love it, or
I do like big. I find that it's yeah. I find well the smaller you go, I'm always amazed with kind of people that do you mini realistic pictures. I
Hmm.
never find brushes small enough to get that kind of amount of detail in. Obviously, you can. Obviously, it's a great skill, but I find that to really get the detail that I want, I need to have quite large sizes. Now, in that series, there are smaller ones actually than that. That they're
Oh,
not
okay.
that big,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just and especially with the landscapes, I need to expand. It's an expansive. Um, it's an expanse. I've got this expansive side to me and this very precise
Hmm.
side as well, which I like to. You know,
So how do you then overcome the sort of? Do you actually do any smaller ones? Because obviously people have got to have a room, they've got to have a wall big enough to put it on, and
mm,
but then there might be someone that wants to buy your work, but it's just oh, we've got nowhere to put it. Obviously, then does that then take you into the realm of sort of, okay, I'm going to do some commissions. I can do that. I can do something for you along those lines that are smaller, or
I can, I can,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
I have done, and yeah, I have done smaller ones of the landscapes. Well, quite a few smaller. I mean,
mm,
60 by 60 centimeters is kind of
yeah,
the smallest I've gone with the landscape.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm probably around the same size for these as well. So they're not all massive. They're not all big. I think but my favorite size is that kind of size to work.
Mm,
But obviously, you do have to. take into consideration. And also, you know, doing prints. I mean, the thing about doing prints is that to really get good quality prints of a painting, you need to get it scanned, and it's all very expensive process.
Yeah.
So I can do prints, but they're kind of not quite as big as I want them to be, if you know what I
No.
mean.
Yeah.
They will come. They will come. That side of things will come.
Well, and also prints are a really good revenue stream,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
for people who can't afford one of your big paintings, but they could afford a smaller one. And also I say this quite a bit. It's an advertising route. You know, someone will
yeah,
go to somebody's house. It's got one of your prints on the wall. They'll start looking you up. Your world is getting bigger because more people have got your work on their wall. It might be
yeah.
different, but it's worth something definitely.
Definitely. I think that's something I'm looking into for this coming period, because I do
Mm,
think that I do get an awful lot of I suppose love about the work, and I know that people can't, you know, afford the original, and I don't want to sell the original for you know, what it's, you know, it has to be, the original has to maintain its value.
yeah, of course. Yeah,
So yeah, I will be doing that. I will be doing that, and yeah, I just it's thinking about those things in more of a, I suppose, in a way for people to enjoy them. You know,
yeah,
not just for me to sell prints, and that's a good revenue stream. It is an exchange. It's, you know, people have to, you know, if they're spending £100 on a print, then that's still £100. You know.
yeah,
So yeah, I think I will get into that, but I do like working big. Is the short answer.
yeah. Good.
Size doesn't
Well,
matter, apparently.
yeah, you could be in denial on that fact. However, let's look at another series that you've got, and I'm again second one in this we'll come to because I've got a view on that. So, but this series, which is obviously a fantasy series, so and for me, being a steampunk artist, I could argue that there's a bit of steampunk in there with the gears and stuff inside there. But what's the meaning behind this?
Well, I think in our pre-chat you said you might you might tell me what you thought, and then I could tell you.
Well, I did probably more from this one. So,
Do this one first, and then I'll go and
well,
see.
okay. There's a bit for me. I don't know if you've looked at any sort of Egyptology stuff, but that symbolism that you've got with the the beak, etc., in that, and in the previous one as well, it sits right within that sort of Egyptian side, the hieroglyphs and the images of ancient Egyptians wearing those sort of headpieces. It led me to that kind of thinking, that there's a bit of almost ancient history type feel to it for me. But
Hmm.
that's because of these two headpieces, and particularly in this other one as well. But as I said to you, that's everybody's going to look at work and get something completely different from it.
Yeah,
But that's what sort of struck me when I looked at these.
yeah. I mean, that's interesting. I think that I think what it was. I mean, if Egyptian culture, all cultures up
Mm,
until, I suppose, the major religions that we're in now were pretty much paganistic, you know. So,
yeah,
and their gods and their mythologies were all about explaining natural forces, because, you know, they didn't have science to explain it. So it was, yeah, that's a kind of, as the underpainting develops.
right.
on that one.
So from that to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so again, it comes back to nature and symbolism of so in this particular piece, you've got her Arcadian Empress, she's called, and you have the kind of bird-headed skull, because this is representation of her being linked to nature. You have a landscape evolving out of her, within her body, and a kind of waterfall at her waist, and a sunlight kind of sky coming through from the shoulders. And then the wings again represent her, as a being attached to the natural world. I mean, you could go as far as basically she's a fairy,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so that really, it's not like a heavy symbolism, and it's not anything kind of really too dark. It's just really, again, trying to encapsulate this natural world embodiment into a figure. This one is it's actually called It's Tough Being Strange, and obviously I don't know about obviously, but it is a Medusa type figure.
Yeah.
And I was looking into the mythology of Medusa, and actually in one of I think in Ovid, that wrote about the mythology, she was a beautiful maiden that got turned into Medusa. So I wanted to kind of, I suppose, symbolize the fact that people that are strange or different, or even monstrous, kind of all started off innocently in a way, and
True.
we the more we project onto them being different or being strange, the stranger they become,
Yeah.
so yeah. And again, this series, again, this is another process which actually I got. It's kind of I don't know if you know of an Scottish artist called Peter Howson. He's pretty well known. Very, he's like one of those upper echelon artists, I suppose, that's contemporary artists. But I saw this film that he did called Prophecy. It's 2019 or something like that, and it just took through the whole process of old master painting techniques
Right.
while he was painting this huge epic painting called Prophecy. And yeah, it was like a penny dropped. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you do an underpainting with all your kind of umber,
Then your layers.
and then you layer and you glaze on top of it the colors. I find it another fascinating process, in a way that I can, do these kind of more fantasy, mythologically based figurative work.
It's quite interesting. It's the layers that give it depth. It will give, and it gives the colors depth that you can't get if it's just all one layer.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the Impressionists came along and said, "Well, do away with all that. You just need to kind of like."
yeah, well, I know, but
And which is all, everything is valid. Everything in art is valid, but I think there's some things still there in this kind of old master technique that it can be contemporized, and the colors. Yeah, there's a glow. For some reason, they kind of glow because you're building it up in layers, and yeah, I get. It's just another fascination of mine.
yeah, it's interesting. I did a years ago now, but I did a kitchen in the house we were living in, and I wanted to give depth to the actual paint. So rather than just put undercoat, primer, top coat, job done, I thinned down each coat so that I put on 15 coats. They were so thin. I mean, they were drying in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I put 15 coats on. The difference in color
Yeah.
was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Completely different and proper depth to it because of all those layers that you built up. So I can
Yeah. Yeah.
understand. And of course, with we're onto the drawings now, but and the other thing about that too is because of the way that I work with my work. Obviously, some of my pictures are 2,000 layers in Photoshop.
Yeah.
That's why I love technical artists a lot, because I'm technical with what I do, but I'm fascinated by the techniques and the technical side of people's art. So you alluded to a few pictures back, you alluded to the fact that you've got drawings that you've done, and in fact what I'm going to do, just one second, I'm going to share your website, because there's plenty of of your drawings on here, which, and there is that common theme through a lot of them of you've got the trees, you've got the nature, but really represented in a completely different way, which I find really superb. Let's just drop down to a few of these. I mean, they're we could have a whole night just talking about your drawings, never mind your paintings as well. But there's the one that, for instance, the one that's down the bottom here. It's that's quite a talking piece, because of what you've got. You've got a proper kind of tree coming up through the middle, but you've got all this real there's so much that you could talk about this, isn't there? Because you've got all of this bundle of twigs and bits of tree, etc., leading up to effectively the head and the brain and everything above it. It's quite a fascinating drawing, and I can see how you've kind of taken these now and brought them into now here we go, something different now completely.
That's just, they're just studies, basically.
Yeah,
the studies in there. Yeah, but
I'll tell you what, they're great. They are really, really cool. So yes, here we go. I find them. It's you're working with such different medium all the time. That's what I like about it. I love it. But the other thing about it, Paul, which is quite important, I think, is you can see it's your work.
yeah, I think
if we look at these and we look at your paintings, etc., you can see that it's your work. I think that's very important, actually, with getting it, understanding that actually it doesn't matter what you're doing, people can still see it's your work.
Yeah, things kind of lead into each other, and they link. And it's, I don't, I'm not going to go off and, well, I might do, who knows, but I'm not going to kind of suddenly start, creating, I don't know, abstract sculptures out of kind of, corrugated iron. And it's like they're all either drawings or paintings, so it's not actually, it's quite contained within those mediums.
But when you're doing some of those drawings, got one right at the end here, I think. Yeah, when you're doing some of those drawings like this, and some of the other ones that you've got on your website,
they are available as prints, by the way.
Yes, and presumably you do also actually plan these. You draw them out so that because God, there's a lot of work that's going into each one.
Yeah, I get the outline, the figure of the outline, but then the kind of trees are. I've got a kind of bit of a map that I use.
Yes.
But when I'm doing things by hand, they always take on a slightly different, passage through the drawing or the painting,
Mm.
or whatever. But I do have a map if it's something like this, which again is done in Photoshop beforehand. So I'm not just, I can't say, oh yeah, I just made this up, yeah,
No.
completely. But it's, yeah, again, I think drawing is just something that I kind of always go back to, almost, and they have led on to the more elaborate, work. The whole Natura Reforma painting series has come from these drawings, and the more kind of fantasy figurative works have come from other drawings as well. So, I mean, I grew up copying Marvel comics and Spider-Man and all that kind of stuff,
Oh, cool.
just,
Yeah.
That was like my first love of drawing, and so that's always stayed with me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So look, again, I've gone from the drawings back to this Natura Forma because there are way more images on your website than we've touched on here, and it's just what this is probably a question that you must get asked, because it's the first thing that I would think of is, what gave you the idea to do this?
That's a good question. I can't think what it was. The first one I did with the trees inside of a form was actually on the drawings. There's a stag head,
Mm,
and I had this whole thing. I was doing did this digital series, and I did some, kind of human forms of stags, and yeah, I just had this whole. In fact, stags do kind of come back in quite a lot of my work in various guises. So that was the first one. Why did I get onto the tree thing? I can't remember now. I think I had I wanted to do a kind of drawing of a stag, and I was into, it was just kind of, that one was an experiment. It turned out actually I kind of finished it and thought, okay, quite like that.
and that,
And then
yeah,
it
and
goes
that's,
into,
yeah,
an obsessive journey into just doing them.
and that is what happens with me. I'll start on an idea and then realize, actually, I've got something here, perhaps, and it just
Yeah,
expands into a
yeah.
whole new collection, if you like.
Exactly.
Which is, yeah. So that also leads on to another question: is when you kind of, even when you're doing your landscapes, where do you sort of grab your inspiration from?
Well, I mean, okay, so there's nature,
Yeah, obviously,
landscapes.
yeah.
There's nature. There's what I'm trying to do with the landscapes is get the idea that if you're standing in front of a sunset or a sunrise, uh, it's not static; it's moving. So that's why I'm trying to get light and movement into the landscapes. And the rest of them and the kind of symbolism, I suppose, between natures, a few different artists that I kind of like. I do love Alphonse Mucha. He did a lot of kind of, that kind of graphic style that he had. Then there's some artists, Leonora Carrington and Remedios Varo, that went into the more esoteric and magical kind of representation.
Mm,
So there's certain artists that I've kind of like discovered along my way, and I'm always I'm a big believer in. Well, I personally love learning about the history of art and how things have evolved and why certain artists were doing what they were doing at that time. So yeah, I think there's lots of influences. There's a bit of influence from kind of Freemasonry and their kind of symbolism that they have in there. but I'm not. I think with my stuff, I don't want to be tied to anything. So I'm not like, I don't want to kind of, preach a kind of like, oh, I'm a, this is a representation of, this particular thing, and it's always evolving, I suppose, and it's my, this is my, come over here and come into my world kind of thing.
Yeah. So that we spoke about this before we came on here. In that, when you're doing an exhibition and people are coming to see your work, it's quite an important fact that you actually talk to people about how you do what you do, where your inspiration was, all that kind of stuff, because then you draw them in to your world, as you've just said.
Yeah.
And you probably might not call yourself a storyteller, but you're telling stories with what you create. And that's the kind of thing that people want to know. And look at me. I've looked at some of your work. I've seen something in it completely different, perhaps, than you intended or not intended. But that's something that you end up, as a buyer, you will buy few things make you buy a picture. First thing, of course, is you've got to like it. Secondly, the story behind it. The artist is right up there as well. Do I like the artist? Do I like them enough to want to invest into their work? And in actual fact, in most cases, how much the painting is the last consideration, because all those things have to come first. And then you say, okay, all right, how much is it? You talk about right at the end, because you need to satisfy those other elements really first.
I agree with you. On all of that. And I think it's taken me, I don't know, in the last, I would say in the last 2 or 3 years to actually kind of know what I'm talking about in a way. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and be able to express it in a way that isn't kind of, well, I think it isn't too kind of highfalutin. It's just kind of, this is just where it's coming from,
Yeah, and also not too salesy. Salesy either. You don't want to be on your hands and knees begging, please buy my picture. You don't want to be doing that. But if you do start talking about how you do it, the fact that it's oils, the process you go through.
Yeah, I find
it's people come along with you. They come along.
Yeah, I find in person an exhibition, I can get into that, and if they're interested. I find it really difficult with social media, though, kind of with just me and a camera talking into a camera saying, this is what it's about, and da 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 da. So I'm very good in the kind of social context, but not in that that marketing social context, I suppose. But
I mean, I think probably what started me off in terms of being able to speak in front of a camera, and also often to no audience or some audience, was lockdown, because the only way that I could do my talks, I do all these talks all over the country, the only way that I could actually carry on doing it was through Teams or Zoom. And and the thing about the hardest part of that is, you might have 100 people all watching you, but they're all on mute.
Yeah.
So you're, half the things you talk about, the funny little things you throw in, nobody reacts. I've said this before, but I've had people eating their dinner or feeding a dog, or one woman unmuted herself by accident. Turns out she was watching EastEnders as well. So you have all of that. But what it does is it gets you used to talking in front of a camera, or talking just to one other person. And all right, we've got people watching. There will be people that watch this afterwards, but it's at the end of the day, really, this is better because we're having a conversation. But when you're talking to a camera and there isn't anybody necessarily talking back, or you can see, of course it's going to be.
I have to. What I should do is video myself asking myself questions, and then I can.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, one of those like where you're off to the side. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Have
it's
that
so
ritual.
it's quite interesting, really. I was a teacher, and for 3 years that was my job, Southwest London School. But when I was at uni training to be a teacher, in my very first year, they put you in a television studio with a camera and recorded you speaking in a conversation, so that when they played it back to you, you actually knew what you really sounded like.
Well,
And
I'll
that's
do that.
quite
I'll
and
do
that's
that
quite
with this.
interesting. Yeah.
You're like, oh my god, it was live. I can't go back.
No, well, that's the thing. It's and you can tell actually, if you talk and you put your hand in front of your face, it bounces back to your ears and it's completely different sound.
Oh well,
So and that's yeah, that's
tell me
quite.
that before, Gary.
Well, you said you were in a band. I thought you might know because
That's all right.
when you're singing, I had a band for 20 years. When you're singing, um, if you can't hear yourself with
Mm,
monitors or whatever, if you can't actually hear yourself, you end up singing flat.
yeah, yeah.
And the way that I used to sort of test myself really was to put my hand in front so that it bounced back to my ears.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's very it is quite interesting how we think, how we sound, but then we find out we do. I found that too with here we go. So Lee Churchill's a guy who always watches every week, and he's got a comment about social media, as we're talking about it, which is effectively the trouble with social media is it's easy to hit a like button rather than interact, and that is true.
That is
You
true.
know, that
Yeah,
is it's very true. Whereas it's so much better if you if people are interacting, and if you are doing a video on social media and you're doing it live, at least you can answer their questions like we are
yeah.
here, really,
I
when
think. I
people come
think.
up with stuff.
Obviously, social media has a lot of benefits, and thanks for putting that in, Lee. By the way,
Mm.
um, I think social media has a lot of benefits, obviously, and it's democratized the art world and all that kind of stuff. So it's not completely, oh, I hate it and all this kind of stuff, because it is useful, and all artists have to
Yeah.
do it to a certain extent. But I do think that now we're getting to a point with algorithms, and it's getting very, you know, this feedback loop of all designed really to kind of sell you something, and
Yeah,
then
and
you
I've got I don't know, I've got close to 7,000 followers on Facebook, but they don't see my posts unless I pay Facebook to show them to them.
exactly, yeah, exactly, and
So I might
mm,
get, 20, 30, 40, 50 people maybe see them out of all those thousands I've got,
yeah. But we
because
have to say we love YouTube, don't we, at the moment?
YouTube's
Because
yeah,
we're
and
on it
you
right now. So
and but YouTube's different because people can search you, they can find
yeah,
you, they can read it, watch it, etc.
mm,
YouTube's a different medium, and also I like the fact that you can do this live. It's pretty much instantly on there as well.
mm.
So after we've finished, it doesn't take long before it's actually boom, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, I'll be
Anybody else can
sharing,
watch it. You
yeah,
can share the link. You don't
yeah.
have to mess around. It's not the same in any shape or form as the others.
I
Instagram,
just wanted
Facebook,
to
etc.
I know we're kind of getting close to an hour, but the painting that you wanted me to explain. Do you want me to just touch on
Oh
that?
yeah, yes, yes, yes. Wait a minute. Let's bring that back.
Yeah. So this
Yeah.
one. So this is it's called apotheosis, which is basically means becoming divine, and she's representing that AI kind of being born,
Ah.
and the two figures either side is kind of like nature is just like, oh, we can't control this, and really that is what's going on. I mean, I've got some other paintings that talk about this whole thing, but that's kind of the representation of that right now. So yeah, it's not just a big robot.
No, but I can now see that. Now you've said that, and also it's a very interesting comment about AI. I think I might have to. What I might do one week is have a few guests. I think I'm going to have 10, but I think I'll have a few guests, and we can have one of these sessions where we do talk about AI and what that's kind of going to mean to the industry effectively and what we do, and whether can you truly be creative using AI. Facebook's full of AI pictures, full of it. You know,
Yeah,
it
I
just
mean, I think again, it can be useful as a tool. You know, if, I don't know if you're mapping out, you know, ideas for a book or something, it can kind of feed back quite a kind of, you know, new ideas, as long as it doesn't do it all for you. But and then there's, you know, things with AI and medicine and medical things, and then trying to work out things with the solar system or the, you know, the way the universe works. I think it's got incredible benefits, but I think when it comes to just, yeah, creating art, you know, it's just, well, it's always just going to exist in a digital realm anyway, isn't it? You know, yes, you can print it out, but, you know, it's not like your work, as you say, hundreds of hours of Gary doing it. Do you know what I mean? And meticulously kind of creating a world. Whereas, you know, what's going to happen 3-4 years time? Someone can just do, oh, do me a Gary Nichols steam.
already happening. It's already happening, isn't it? It's already happening in terms of write me a song like in the style of Sting. You know, it's already happening. And I think the trouble is, what potentially could happen is that everybody just gives up and says, well, what's the point of me doing this? What's the point of me trying to do this work and sell it and all the rest of it when somebody sitting in their bedroom can churn it out and sell it anywhere?
Yeah, I suppose, but there will always be the I don't know. I'm optimistic that we won't completely die out.
No, and I am
Sometimes
as
it
well.
feels like it.
But yeah, it's we've come definitely gone over the hour, but and quite interesting, isn't it? Because every single person I have on here says, "Oh my word, I'm never going to be able to talk for an hour," but the hour just goes,
Yeah.
and that is a testament to the people that are coming on, got something to say, and how good their work is, and also the other side of this is not, you know, I do this to promote artists. That's the whole reason. This is something that I did. I spoke to Lisa, who runs Flux, about and said, look, you know, you've got, so edition 11 of the Flux magazine is out currently. So there are interviews and stuff in there too. But this is to sort of supplement that and say, look, you know, we can do this live. We can talk to people, get a good bit more information. And I learn something every week. Every single week, I learn something, which means that people watching hopefully learn something as well, which is really
Well, I think you're
quite special.
doing a great job. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thanks very much, Paul, and thank you for coming on. Been an absolute pleasure. And if I do a special where we discuss our AI, you're definitely coming on. And then what we do probably at some point next year, we'll have a catch up, get you back on for a bit, see what you're doing and stuff, where your next direction's taking you. But as I've already said, people can go to your website, which is paulsquire.com. They can find out all about you there. They can contact you there.
Yeah.
You're also on Instagram, Facebook as well.
Yeah, but Facebook, I don't really.
No, okay,
I've just let
Instagram, yeah.
Facebook slip.
Yeah, well, I love Instagram, but trying to build your audience is way harder than
Well, yeah,
Facebook ever
I've got
was.
an idea for some. Maybe I'll do this next year, but this, you know, this thing called an algorithm, which is like this Hydra type monster that just
Mm,
something.
yeah,
You know,
sounds good.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have said on here.
I
Someone has said
shouldn't
it
have
before
done,
you.
so I could have kept it to myself. But yeah.
Brilliant, Paul. Thanks very much. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you very
Been
much.
great.
And thank you.
Hang around a bit too, because we'll have a quick chat afterwards. But for now, thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just a reminder, next week we are on at 7 o'clock on Wednesday. It is Sarah Levin, and this gives you a little bit of taste of what she does. Primarily because, as I said right at the beginning, it's Halloween next Thursday, and quite frankly, I have a Ring doorbell that will be going absolutely bonkers, and we will be constantly interrupted. That's assuming I would be here, and I'm not. I'm actually at a award ceremony thing for my day job. I'm at the O2 next Thursday, so we're doing it on Wednesday, 7 o'clock, Sarah Levin. And as I've already said too, this current issue, issue 11 of the Flux magazine, Flux Review magazine, is out now. So wherever you get your magazines, and you can find that, and or also just go on to the Flux Review website, and you can find all you need there. And oh look, Lisa. Well, here we go. Lisa. Sarah Levin Art has just actually come on. Brilliant. Lisa said it was fantastic, which thanks very much, both of you. And Sarah, as I said, I will see you next week. And I'm looking forward to that as well, because Sarah's got some very interesting techniques that she uses to create her work, and she's a lovely lady as well. So thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this edition, and I will see you next week.